Hello and happy Wednesday here in the Boilermaker Lounge. I am Sam Springer, as always, joined by the All-American Grant Flora. Grant, a day later, but still a lot to talk about.
Yep. I mean, like, not a lot changed in just the one day there, as if it
Thank
would have been
goodness.
right if we'd come out on Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, we're coming off a weekend that finally went a little bit more the way we were hoping it would, and a week now where Purdue doesn't have to play until Saturday, right, against
Yep.
Oregon. So
Yep.
a little bit of a break, which is probably good for them. But they get to head into it off a win instead of 4 losses in a row is what it would have been if they hadn't beaten Maryland. So yeah, it's kind of just one of those points in the season where I'm sure they can go back and work on some things now when you get a full week of being able to practice and not have to prep for a game right away. So I think this is a well timed, week off almost, if you consider it that, for Purdue.
Well, it's 6 days, so yeah, I mean, essentially it's a week off to where between games. And Sunday, the Boilermakers went to College Park, and normally a place that is really hard to play. This year is a little different since they don't have they're not as good as what they have been in the past few years, especially at College Park. But the Boilermakers with a 30-point win over the Maryland Terrapins, 93-63. Grant, we talked about this in the post game. This was a game that you expected to see a big win, but at the same time you were a little, I don't know if trepidation, you had some trepidation going into it, thinking, my goodness, what are we getting ready to get into? Because if they struggle, what is going to happen? Like what are we getting into? It was kind of a, until that game got going and Purdue finally started pulling away, it was a little bit of a, almost a hold your breath type of game until that point.
Yeah, I mean, it was on paper, it was something that looked like it was going to go Purdue's way pretty easily, but you could have said that about a couple of the games they played and they lost. And so, especially with it being on the road, and I'm sure College Park hasn't been as rowdy as normal this season just with the way it's gone for Maryland, but like it has the capability of being a pretty difficult environment. So, especially if Maryland had hung around in that game a little bit more as the game was going on, I could have seen that being an issue. So
Mm-hmm.
by and large, just like a great game for Purdue to kind of get out strong, and just keep kind of extending that lead and figuring out some things so that they get back on the right track and don't have to deal with another stressful game and another potential upset bid to give them their 4th straight loss. So overall, definitely dodged what could have been, a bullet. Not that it was super likely, but like whenever you're on the road, you never know.
Well, Fletcher lawyer, and yes, I get it. People, they're the big critique of him is and I don't necessarily agree with him either. With this critique is, well, he shoots great against bad teams, but when he gets in games against good teams, that's where he struggles. I don't think that's the case. I think that he's a streaky shooter is what happens with Fletcher Lawyer, and he'd had a sizable streak where he struggled pretty mightily for a while from threes to where they just weren't falling, and it's got to start somewhere, and it started against Maryland. I think it started against Maryland on Sunday when he went 7 of 10 from threes, and it just appeared to me that he felt like I don't think it was a sigh of relief, but I think it was more of a I knew this was coming from him. Like he exuded that, like, this is why I keep shooting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure knocking down the first one or two was really helpful. He's made in a couple of these past games when he was still kind of in that slump, he would make one or two early,
Right.
and I would keep thinking like, "Oh, this must be the game," and then nothing else ever happened. So, I'm sure that noise kind of reached its peak after the IU game,
Mm-hmm.
and so like I'm sure there was motivation there, even though I know they weren't trying to listen to the noise. They were trying to just do their thing.
It's
Uh,
hard not to.
yeah, it's hard not to, and you're still, the noise is at its peak because what's happening is so unexpected, but also such an issue from a Purdue perspective. And so naturally, that same thing that's causing those noise is the same thing that's going to motivate the players to get back into their form. So, that one way or another, there's that peak of like, okay, it's time to get this rolling again. And I think Fletch probably played a little bit like that, but at the same time, we talked about it in the post game, like he didn't do anything outside of himself.
No,
He just,
right.
got the confidence and the assertion of like, I'm going to be the best version of myself and just get myself out of this slump. And hopefully this is hopefully this is in the rearview mirror and we don't come revisit some of these conversations we've already had.
Well, and we talked about this, and some of this we've talked about kind of in the past on this show, but we did talk about it. This game specifically was they played within themselves. They didn't they were up 20. They didn't just start jacking up the shots to for the sake of shooting. They stayed within their game. They stayed within themselves. There were a couple of times that Fletcher took a fake, had an okay open shot, not the best looking open shot, did a fake, did a dribble to the side to get the guy out of the way, then took the shot. Now, there were a couple of times, or there was at least one time, that he did that ball fake and he drove to the basket rather than, making it a point to put up a three just for the sake of putting up threes. He played within. He's got the capability to get to the hoop. And draw a foul. He's not necessarily the greatest of getting to the hoop and finishing, even though he does finish. But at the same time, he doesn't he knows how to draw a foul.
Yeah. We've talked about this before, but like a very underrated part of his game is his ability to drive and create some of that interior offense. And, sometimes it doesn't necessarily go his way, but he's had success with it in the past.
Yep.
And I think having those different dimensions is really important for him. You've got to be able to keep your defender honest in the sense that if they're going to close out hard to you, you've got to make them pay. And I'm sure Coach Painter's talked about that several times and just, trying to keep the defense honest. And so Fletch does a good job of that. Sometimes, he'll maybe get into traffic and try and, put up a shot that is highly contested or just not really what you want because of the defense and where it's at. But for the most part, he does a good job. And when he gets into those rhythms, like if a shot's not falling, he can do that, and that might help his shot to fall later. Or maybe, he's not getting what he wants on the inside, but if he can make some shots, it just helps him find different avenues and different angles. So when he's at his best, he's got the right balance of shots versus drives and attacking closeouts, and he's able to convert on the majority of both scenarios.
Well, and he wasn't the only one. I made note of the one that comes off the top of my head right away. There was a lot going on. I was doing some other things while watching the game as well, so I might have missed some things. But Jakari Harris had a play like that as well. He had an open three. He had the guy closing out on him, but he had an open shot if he wanted it. And this was, I think they might have been up 15-16 at that point. It was in the first half or midway or so through the first half. But he had an open three, and it was like, oh, okay, he's gonna put that three up, and you could see the guy closing out, and he just ball faked, got him in the air, and drove past him, and there was nobody there. So he recognized that he had the he made the athletic move rather than just jack it up there, and if it goes in, great. If not, we're up 15 or whatever. But he made it, and he drew a foul. He went to the line. He got 2 free throws. It was just overall, it was, that first half especially, and they blew out the lead a little bit more in the second half as well to get to the 30 points. But at that same point, it was it was kind of over by halftime, essentially. Even though the Boilermakers needed to keep on the accelerator just to make sure there wasn't a second half comeback. But that first half, they did a lot of good things against a team that they should be beating by this much, and that was what I did post about that. We expected that, but there are things that just kind of came out of this game that this was a welcome game to show up at this point because of the things that came up during the 3-game losing streak that they needed to work on, and this was an in-game ability to work on those things.
Yeah, I mean, you still, from a defensive standpoint, like, yeah, there were a lot of things that better teams would have been able to exploit that
Sure.
Maryland couldn't. And, a huge part of it is, the whether it's pick and roll, whether it's pick and pop, those types of situations that really burned Purdue, particularly UCLA and Illinois games. Like, we'll have to see how some teams with some better guards, better shooting bigs, things like that, how Purdue can guard them, I guess. But still, especially on the offensive end, huge to see what they were able to do just to get back into the flow and the sync. So yeah, I think we didn't really comment as much as I think maybe we should have on what Elijah Saunders brought to Maryland, which was practically nothing.
Yeah, 5 fouls. He brought 5
Yeah,
fouls.
5 fouls, 0 points, 13 minutes, and he was one of those guys that could have put Purdue in some binds with his
Right.
ability to stretch out the 4 spot and shoot. So it was huge to see Purdue just figure out a way to keep him out of it, and I'm not sure how much of it was particularly Purdue's design. I'm sure part of it was, but and how much of it was just Saunders not having a good game. But man, that was a surprise. And then some of these Maryland guards, I mean, Darius Adams played well, and he would have the ability to create his own shot and knock down some tough ones, but it didn't turn into really much of an issue. He had 17 points, but it's not like obviously didn't really make a huge difference in the point spread. So yeah, just overall good to see Purdue neutralize some of those threats.
Maryland had 3 guys in double figures, one with 8, and then nobody else with more than 2. Like they were very, very, and none of them with 2 was Saunders, like we just talked about. Miles Rice, this kid, he may be one of the nicest kids in the world, but the fact that when he came into IU last year and they were talking about, oh, IU's got a shooter, I never once saw him make a shot. He to me has been one of those, and he only took one on Sunday, but to me, he never he's like one of the most hyped players that I've ever heard of that I've seen absolutely nothing from other than some free throws. And that's not me digging on him. I just have not seen it. Maybe I only see the bad games. But the games that I've seen of him, especially ones that Purdue are involved in, he's been a non-factor. He didn't have any points. Saunders had 0. And let's see, looking at the guys that played some minutes here, more than Alston, he had 2. Yeah, they just didn't have any scoring other than the 3. And Coit didn't score. He scored, I think, 4 of them rather late in the game. So he was held in check a good portion of the game as well. And I think that is huge. For the confidence of, okay, we just got done with we were in the middle of a 3-game losing streak. The confidence of being able to shut down their shooter, one of their shooters in Saunders. Coit, he was outsized by Purdue, believe it or not. Their guards were bigger than him, and Braden Smith was bigger than him. But they shut him down. And yes, they're going to get teams that they're going to play that are going to have better shooters. They're going to make them pay more on the defensive end. But you got to start somewhere with the rebuilding of it. So it's nice to have this game against Maryland, and then, and I know I've gone on a little bit of a tangent, so bear with me. But then you get a break. You mentioned that it might be kind of nice. Dustin Schutte posted that he's maybe Purdue's a little upset that they've got 6 days off because of the way that they performed, and I think it could be one. I don't know which way it is. Is it nice to have those days off? Sure. At the same time, would you rather be back in action so you can keep things going? Sure. But I think we will see what happens and how well it's received and how well this game against Maryland was to make them feel better about things by how they perform against Oregon. But if they come out and a little sluggish and fall behind and have to kind of scrap, then okay, yeah, they we maybe they aren't completely cured, but I think this did a lot for what ailed them.
Yeah, I thought about that angle like that Dustin had of like you really want all the time off when you come off such a good performance, but my thinking is like, yeah, you had basically Wednesday through Saturday, that time between the IU Maryland game was a decent amount of time to kind of go back and figure some things out, but you also had to start preparing for Maryland there before too long, and you had a lot of the emotional, the hard conversations you had to have with the player meeting and everything going on that week, and then you get ready for Maryland and you get out of it. Now I think you get into time where you've kind of cleared the air a little bit. You've figured out some of the hard, mental stuff, if you will, or all that kind of outside of just strictly the game. Now you can focus more on from strictly the game, like what do we have to fix? What do we have to work on in practice without having to think about an opponent looming within a couple days? I think that will be very helpful, even though, yeah, you're coming off a great game and you have to wait all week to play again. But like you said, it could be good, it could be bad, and we won't know until I play Oregon.
I think there are pros and cons to both angles of it, and so this game, it was against the next to last place team in the Big Ten. Purdue should have won this by a comfortable margin, which they did. Were there still some concerns about some things? Yeah, I mean, but some of these guys that weren't, we mentioned Coit and Saunders. Now, don't get me wrong, we didn't go in depth and break down the Terrapins, but I didn't necessarily see Mills, Washington, and Adams being 18, 17, 14 either. At the same time, they shut down Coit and Saunders, who we did talk about because we knew those are proven entities up to this point. So is there some need for concern? I'm sure there probably is. I mean, if you look at all of these stats on the team comparisons, Purdue's better in everything except, let me make sure I'm right in this, except fast break points. I'm sorry, and steals. So, there wasn't much that went wrong for Purdue in this game. There just wasn't a bunch.
Yeah, and every position Purdue had the advantage pretty much, and their strengths were kind of Maryland's weaknesses. They just were a much more solid team. So a good probably game that you want after a hard stretch, but at the same time, not a game where you can go in and say everything is, all roses and whatever the saying is, like
unicorns and rainbows.
Yep, there it is. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, but definitely you want a game like that to kind of right the ship a little bit.
Absolutely. And it's Braden Smith only had 6 assists, but you know what, Grant? He still out-assisted the entire Maryland team. 6-5.
That's crazy. 5, man. Yeah, Maryland's got to have more than 5 assists.
Well, and the thing is a lot of these are they had open shots that could have turned into
Right.
some assists. They just didn't hit them.
Mhm.
But yeah, Braden Smith, 19 points, 6 assists, 2 rebounds. I do believe he had 1 steal. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought he had a steal, but I don't have the breakdown of all the. I guess I could switch over to the.
He is not
Uh,
credited with this
no, he
deal.
was not. Yes, that's right. Well, okay, he still had a good line, I guess. 2 rebounds, 4 of 6. Fletch and Braden combined for an 11 of 16 bid from 3-point range. The other on Sunday, CJ Cox only had 1 point, but you know what? He did a lot of good things. He had 4 rebounds. He had a couple of assists, but he played good defense. And I think. Whatever we get from him, and I think we've mentioned this a few times, but whatever we get from him is going to be uh, icing on the cake, simply because he has the defensive responsibility that we really have grown to understand. That's his main concern when he gets on the court.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of the same story. Like when you get up against better competition, like you got to have a little bit more from him. But
Sure.
obviously, they didn't need him against Maryland, and he's proven though that when they need him, he'll produce. Like in
I was
some
gonna
of
say he
these
only took
games,
2 shots.
right? And in some of these games where they had the 3-game losing streak, he was a bright spot in a lot of those games, not just
Right.
defensively but also offensively. So
Yep.
I'm not concerned about that at all. But I do think against better teams, he needs to be a threat, and he needs to be able to. He's gonna get positions to make teams pay because he's gonna be option number 5 most of the time when he's on the court. And when you get those opportunities, you got to cash in.
Yep. Agree completely, but a big win from Purdue, 93-63 over the Terrapins at College Park. I still, it's kind of one of those that whenever you can get a win in College Park, just like Piscataway, you're like, yes, we got a win there,
Mm-hmm.
because of just how difficult it normally is every year to go in and play. Against Maryland in College Park, but a big 30-point win for the Boilermakers. But let's move on to our other couple of topics. We wanted to talk about some early postseason projections. We're in February. We're just around 5 weeks, I think, away from Selection Sunday. Not too long from now, we'll be getting the brackets. Obviously, we are about right around just over a month, I guess, away from the Big Ten tournament. Not that it's a huge deal, but that once you get that started, it's like, yeah, we're almost there. Like that's our Christmas. The tournaments are Christmas. But the Boilermakers have come, or the net rankings, the KenPom, the AP, all the polling when it comes to Purdue at the start of February, which is like I said, we're about 6 weeks, let's say, until we get going on the tournament. This is kind of an early, but yet it's not way too early to kind of get a feeling of where Purdue's at, and they are in a pretty good spot. They're AP wise, they stayed at number 12. Grant, they didn't drop even after losing to IU. They stayed at number 12, and the other rankings came out. The net rankings, the KenPom, both have them at number 8. So they are a top 10 team in those two rankings. And the reason why we bring this up is because a lot of these go into the seedings and what decides what's a quad 1 win, a quad 2 win, and quad 1 losses, which I do believe all of Purdue's losses are quad 1s, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, it stinks that they've got 4 losses, but if they're going to have 4 losses, it's a lot better to have the 4 that they've got than if they were to have gotten beat by Rutgers.
Yeah.
But top 10 team in the net rankings and the KenPom.
Yeah, and that's why, that's why scheduling the way they schedule and everything is so important. Because if you're looking strictly at the quad 1 and 2 wins and losses and stuff, like they stack up. They still stack up as well as just about anybody in the country, except that they have 4 losses and most teams only have 1, 2, or 3. Like that's the only difference. And when all those losses come as quad 1 losses, it's more so like it almost hurts you more because they were opportunities to get quad 1 wins that you didn't get. Like the loss count isn't as big a deal, at least in like the middle seed lines. The loss count's important. That keeps you from a 1, but like I'd rather be 6-4 in quad 1 than 4-2. You know, even though they have more losses, those wins are going to count for more. And so that's why it's important that Purdue schedules the way they do, especially in the non-conference, to get some of those quad 1 opportunities. And then for those who don't know with the quad, like how they determine these quad rankings, let me see if I can find the exact.
Well, let me make a statement real quick while you're doing that. I'm looking at when the net rankings, or not the net rankings, the KenPom. You're talking about Purdue being one of those that has 4 losses and they're number 8. But if you look at the 7 line right above them, and mind you, this is not even a top 15 ranked team. The number 7 team in KenPom is Florida, and they're 16-6. So you can have some losses and still, when it comes to KenPom, which it's not the holy grail of 100% accurate all the time, but normally if you're in those that top 10 of KenPom, you're a serious title contender. Now, can this change by the end of the year? Absolutely. We've still got 6 weeks. But at the same time, you're starting to see this form to where, you're top 10. You've got Michigan, Arizona, Duke, Iowa State, Illinois, Houston, Florida, Purdue, then Michigan State, UConn. UConn's 20-1 after last night. I'm sorry, 21-1 after last night. Or no, 22-1 after last night. I was looking at Nebraska's number there, but so like you can have some losses and still be pretty high in the KenPom and still be a title contender even with some losses.
Yeah, like UConn only has 5 quad 1 wins. That's like 5 is good, but compared to like 21-1, which is what the record is, only having 5 quad 1 wins isn't, it's not enough to put you in the top 3 or 4 teams in a net or a KenPom.
Think about their conference; they're not going to get many more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they, especially if they take another loss, which odds are they do, just because of the way basketball works. Like that, their conference and then maybe a couple losses is going to be enough to keep them at least on like the 2 line, most likely. Now I know some projections have them at the 1. I like Katz or DeCourcy or somebody has them on the 1 line. I remember
they're number 3 in the country.
Yeah,
but they're number 10 in the KenPom.
But it's like those losses are going to be a much bigger deal for teams that don't have the same bed of quad 1 wins as a team like Duke, Arizona, Michigan, and then Purdue. So like obviously because Purdue's ranked 8th in the net compared to 7th, and yet they have 4 losses compared to 1 for UConn. It's because they have more quad 1s and whatnot. So, and then again, we're talking about all these quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4, and most people just don't know what that means.
If you're a good team, you don't want quad 4 losses.
Yeah, or really anything outside quad 1. Like if you're a top 5 team and you're taking a quad 2 loss, like that will hurt you. Like Michigan, they only have the 1 loss, but they have a ton of quad 1 wins, but they're not going to be number 1 in the net because they got that quad 2 loss to Wisconsin. And the reason that is because the quadrant games, they depend on where it's played. So a home game, it's only considered quad 1 if that team's ranked in the top 30 of the net. Whereas if you play a top 75 net team, but you're on the road, that's a quad 1 game. So Purdue's win against Wisconsin was a quad 1 win because Wisconsin's ranked 41st in the net and they were on the road. But Michigan's loss to Wisconsin was a quad 2 loss because Michigan played them at home. And so that's how the quad 1 quadrants
There's so much that goes into this.
Right. And then it can change as teams change positions. So like for Michigan, their loss is a quad 2 loss right now, but if Wisconsin keeps playing better and gets in that top 30, that becomes a quad 1 loss. And so, that it can be very, fluid in that way.
What would be great? Going into the last day of the season, Wisconsin's a quad 1 loss, and then Purdue beats them and turns it into a quad 2.
Yeah. Yeah, although I highly doubt Wisconsin would drop much, if at all, in the net rankings with the
No, I know that, but I'm just thinking
Yeah.
out loud that because
Right.
of it being Michigan, it would just be poetic justice.
Yeah. So, but we'll see. Maybe
I think Michigan's going to have more losses by the time.
It could be that
point.
Purdue win is what gives them a Big Ten championship and takes it from Michigan in the game that Purdue won and Michigan lost, because Michigan, both teams played them at home. So that could be poetic too if it happens. But a lot has to go right.
Well, 36-4, dude. Come on.
A lot goes right if that's what comes to pass. So, yeah. But just like
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's just kind of an overview of how the quadrants work. So like 1 through 30 at home, 1 through 50 neutral, and 1 through 75 on away. That's quadrant 1 for you. And then quadrant 2, 3, 4, I'm not going to go through each of them, but like they kind of follow suit in that way of, the ranges. So it's complicated, but at the same time, it's kind of nice. Like, because road games, especially in conference, are hard to win no matter how good a team is. And so it's nicer to have, it's a game. Like if you lose to a 65th team in the net, it's nice that still counts as a quad 1 loss if it's on the road, because like UCLA. I'm not sure exactly where UCLA is at. Let me look at it real quick.
And it has to do with where they're at in the net rankings that decides the quads, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so like UCLA is 43rd in the net. That would have been a quad 2 loss if it was at Mackey, but it was on the road, so it's quad 1. And Indiana is, I guess they're 30th now, so they would have been a quad 1 loss no matter what. But like, it just kind of, obviously they depend on where it's at, and those are games that Purdue should have won just because they're the better team, but because it's on the road, life's just so much more difficult. And it's nice that the net rankings and the quad 1 wins account for that.
Yeah, it's nice that it recognizes that.
Mm-hmm.
With those rankings, like I said, 8 in both the KenPom and the net rankings. So that tells you that while the sky was falling with those 3 losses in a row for many of you, Purdue has stayed in the top 10 for the rankings that matter. We like to see the number 1 or the 1-digit ranking next to their name because of what they get with the AP. But when you get into it and get deep into it, they're still a top 10 team, even though they had their issues. And they've got a schedule that's coming up. They could take 1 or 2, maybe even more losses into that. Will it drop them out of the top 10 of both of these? Potentially, but at the same time, maybe not as far back as what we think they could fall because of who it is. The Iowas, the Nebraskas, the Michigan State. They play against IU. All these games that are coming that could it could catapult them into the top 5 if they played, if they got a good enough record out of it too.
After the Oregon game, each of the next 6 games are quad 1, because Ohio State's 40 in the net now.
Yeah,
so they're a quad 1. Indiana at home's a quad 1. They will have, based on the current net rankings, they will have 6 straight quad 1 opportunities. If they win them all, that puts them at 12, and it's not likely that many teams will have more than 12. And sure, they'll have 4 losses, but those 12 wins will be monstrous. Now, that obviously is contingent on Purdue winning all 6, which is definitely feels like a stretch just because of how hard it is to play that consistent, especially on the road. Right, but it can happen, and we've seen Purdue do some pretty crazy things, and they're less on the list of being hunted right now, and they're more of the hunters. So, especially with Michigan State at home, anything can really happen. But like, it just shows how much basketball is left to play, and the back half of this Big Ten schedule is absolutely stacked. This past weekend, you saw the top 4 teams play each other.
Right.
And so simply because of that, Purdue gets closer to the higher echelon of the standings.
Yeah, if Purdue in those next 6 games, let's say they go 4-2, they're still at 10-6 in quad 1 games. You know, that's still 10 wins in the quad 1 with potential for more as they get into the Big Ten tournament prior to the selection Sunday. You know, I mean, they're not slotted in 100% right there as, you know, when it comes to the Big Ten tournament, you can bump up seed lines if you're borderline right now, you know, at a certain seed line. Now, if they're pretty solidly in, there might not be much that can be done. But you know what? It's still the fact that you know, 10-6. Would 12-4 be absolutely amazing? Absolutely, because you know you're probably talking about a 2 seed by then. If not, depending on what they do. You know, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that it's gonna happen necessarily, but you know what? Illinois is pretty good. I have to think that they're one of the, man. Michigan's really, really good, but oh my goodness, Illinois. Whew. Anyways, I just watched them play. I watched them play against the Nebraska game on Sunday as well, and it was amazing to watch them play. They are built for March, I think, for a March run. So, people had high hopes on them or high expectations of them, and I think they're following through with some of it. But Purdue could get up to a 2 seed if they were to pull a 6-0, and I don't know that that's going to happen.
Right?
Potentially there, yes, absolutely.
I mean, if they straight went out, like I'm talking, win the regular season, win the rest of the regular season games, and then win the Big Ten tournament. That's 4 losses on the year. Purdue, the year the Zach
that'd be
Edey
30-4.
Yeah, the Zach Edey year, they had 4 losses heading into the NCAA tournament. So like they'd be in the exact same position. Obviously, not likely. Like they would obviously have to win the 6 quad one games in addition to the other 3 regular season games they have left. So there's 9, and then you have to win 3 games in the Big Ten tournament. All 2 of the 3 for sure would be quad 1, if not all 3. So like monster task to do that. But that with all of that kind of taken into account, they'd be in the exact same position they were in 2 years ago. So it's possible, and it's still there, but it's just a little bit.
I don't know that you go about expecting it though.
No, you can't. If you do try and expect it, and then they lose another game, like you're just gonna be
nothing but
on that roller coaster again, and it's
right.
Yeah, it's not really worth that.
Well, we started talking about where they could end up, maybe potentially in the seed lines, and maybe getting up. If they were to run the table, I wouldn't rule out, and that includes the Big Ten tournament. I wouldn't rule out a number 1 seed, but I'm not going to say that I expect that. You know, we kind of both talked about, you know, don't expect it, be hopeful for it, and cheer them on, but don't be expectant of it. But with that kind of thought process, let's talk about where the prognosticators, the early on for the latest bracket projections, where they have the Boilermakers. Our buddy Mike DeCourcy from Fox Sports. He currently has Purdue as a 4 seed in the East Regional, which goes to the Washington, D.C., with their first opponent being North Dakota State, a team that Oscar Clough probably is pretty familiar with since they're in the same conference.
Yeah, that would be obviously an interesting first-round matchup. Oscar Clough has that kind of relationship, but I also think that would help, like, to not overlook them and to know a little bit more about them, be a little bit more familiar. I feel like any of that type of thing is good when you're playing a first-round matchup. And I don't expect this Purdue team to have some of those issues with first-round games. And, like, for one thing, this group hasn't, outside of obviously freshman year for Braden and Fletch, but like being seniors, being having a good point guard being so important in March. I don't see them struggling that first round, but you still take any help you can get.
They have DeCourcy in that region, and since it includes Purdue, we'll get into who's in that region. They have Duke as he has Duke as the number 1 seed, Wisconsin the number 9 seed, which Big Ten, Tennessee the 5 seed, which would be a second round date against them against the Volunteers if this were to hold true and this were the bracket, a second round game against the Volunteers, and Illinois the number 2 seed in the East region. That's a stacked region if that's the way it plays out, because while Tennessee has struggled, they still are a good, well-coached basketball team and a very talented team on top of it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah, that would be an interesting region. I think Wisconsin, I'd like them over Miami of Ohio. I know Miami's undefeated, but like Wisconsin playing well. They would be interesting. I think it'd be an interesting second round matchup for Duke. And then obviously Purdue, Tennessee would be a really good second round matchup, high caliber matchup. Vanderbilt's interesting. They've kind of hit a slide since they lost their undefeated streak, I guess, to start the season. And so they're down to the 3 line. I feel like they're a team that if Purdue ended up seeing them, I'd be okay with Purdue playing them, but It's just not likely that would happen.
Oh, Vanderbilt's the 3 seed in this region?
They are. I think
you're probably right. I'm not looking at the graphic from Mike DeCourcy. I was looking at Dustin Schuette's article about it. So let me look it up while you keep talking about that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Vanderbilt's the 3, which like I said, I would be okay with Purdue playing them if they ended up being in that position, although you don't normally see 4s and 3s matched up in the Elite 8, which is where it would be. And then you got Illinois at the 2. So, and if Purdue played Illinois, obviously wouldn't love that matchup. We've talked about how that wasn't a great matchup for Purdue. And to be honest, that would be the most likely matchup if they made it to the Elite 8, would be to play Illinois.
Right.
But you have the advantage of playing them once already. And I think whenever you play a team multiple times, you're always the team that lost the first time is always going to have an advantage compared to what it was.
It doesn't always come to the point where they win,
right,
but they have an advantage because they've seen the team already. Yeah, I agree.
And they have more to grow from than the team that won. They can say, we're going to change this. And the other team can do that, but they're changing from something that already worked. Whereas you are changing from something that clearly didn't work because you didn't win. So I just feel like there's always more you just have a higher ceiling when you're playing a team for the second time and you lost. So they would have that going in their favor, but personnel-wise, still a matchup. And then, of course, that's on the off chance they can get past Duke in the Sweet 16. And I don't really know that I like that matchup either. Obviously, Duke's a really good team, but also compared to other 1 seeds, like I think Purdue has a tough time stopping Cameron Boozer. And even if they could, you've got guys like Isaiah Evans that are going to cause problems. You've got just kind of all the chaos that Duke causes. So their defense, their rebounding, like that would not be an ideal situation to find yourself in the Sweet 16, but it never is if you play 1 seed, which is why it's important that Purdue, I think, get to that 2 or that 3 line.
Yeah. Well, let's to really change it up. We're going to move to NCAA.com, Andy Katz, and his projection. Because the reason I say that is because it's a completely different region. It's a different seed. It's a different opponent. And the teams in that bracket with Andy Katz's projection for Purdue is a big different one, too. He has the Boilermakers a 3 seed in the Midwest, which is in Chicago or out of Chicago, and their first round opponent is Austin Peay. Looking at the other seeds in this, you have the 1 seed Michigan, the 5 seed North Carolina, the 4 seed Texas Tech, the 6 seed the mid-exhibition season national champion Kentucky Wildcats. Then you have USC playing Auburn, and Iowa State, the 2 seed. Like, this is a pretty loaded one, potentially as well, if this were the case for Purdue.
Yeah, that sounds like another kind of nightmare, but yeah, it's just.
But they would get Iowa State in the Sweet 16, in the Sweet 16 rather than the 1 seed.
Yeah, and that's nice, but Iowa State's another one of those teams that's just not a good matchup. Like you talk about, Iowa State and Illinois are probably two of the teams you just really don't want to see. I think
you don't want to see them. You want to see them get upset.
Yeah, and I know that the two teams that you lost to, like, it's easy to just say that. Obviously, you don't want to play them because you lost to them, but like just Milan Momcilovic and the problems he poses for Purdue in all those different ways, just because of who he is as a player. Not to mention Josh Jefferson, who wasn't even a major factor in that first game, right, and definitely will be if they play them again. I do think that Braden Smith would step up and outplay Tamin Lipsey. I think that would go Purdue's direction the second time around, but I think Momcilovic is the X factor, and that gives Purdue a lot of headaches.
Yeah, that is definitely a bracket that is those first 2 brackets just are one of those that you're like, no, I don't even want to deal with that bracket. I really don't, because it has them playing teams that they either have played in the past that they didn't match up great with at that point, or they you can just see that maybe they don't match up very well. They might not match up well. Now, again, glad we don't play these things on paper, because that would mean, you just go with chalk everywhere, and whoever the 1 seeds are, that's where you go. But definitely a difficult one there. I'm looking at, and is this the right one? As of February 2nd, is the East region?
I've been looking for this bracket the entire time we've been talking about this, and I just found it.
Well, this isn't even. I've got the CBS Sports Bracketology, but it doesn't match what Dustin Schutte has, because let's go with what CBS Sports Bracketology as of February 2nd, which is 2 days ago. Monday? It has Purdue in the West as a 3 seed. Now, this one, Dustin Schutte wrote that CBS Sports had them as a 3 seed in the East, which would have been Duke, Houston, the number 2, and Florida, the number 4. This one has what I'm finding on social media. This post, CBS Sports Bracketology as of February 2nd, they have Purdue a 3 seed, but in the West, playing Portland State, with Alabama the 6 seed, who they would play second round, Iowa as the 7 seed, UConn the number 2 seed, Wisconsin playing NC State in the 8-9 matchup, Arizona the number 1 seed, Texas Tech the 5 playing Miami of Ohio, and Virginia the 4 seed. So that is it's a tough bracket, but I like that one than all the ones that we've seen thus far.
Yeah. I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing a different one than what you're seeing. But
let's see. I'm seeing one that was posted 2 days ago.
Okay.
CBS Sports College Basketball is with CBS Sports.
Mine was updated this morning, but
okay, so maybe that's why. Maybe Schutte.
Yeah, because I'm seeing the Purdue in the East. I mean, I know we're talking about a lot of different projections that aren't even going to end up being what happens, but
that's right, because Purdue's going to be a 1 seed in the Midwest,
right?
30-4. Remember?
I'd almost rather Purdue be a 2 seed in the Midwest than a 1 seed in
any other bracket,
West or something. You know what I mean? Get the
No, I'm just saying
But
number 1 seed in the Midwest. Just make
right,
it
that's
ideal.
perfect. That'd be perfect. But yeah, it's obviously the tournament's all about matchups, right? And for Purdue, there are some very clear matchups that favor them and matchups that don't. And I'm not just talking about the seed lines. I'm talking about personnel and individual matchups like Iowa State's Momcilovic. And so as we get closer to Selection Sunday and as we start to, you can kind of start to tell where teams are going to fall because you know the rough order heading into the final week or two, and you know where teams are going to want to go. Like Arizona, unless they drop off the one line, they're going to be a 1 seed in the West because nobody else wants the West. Duke, Iowa State, Michigan. Nobody's going to, even if Arizona were the fourth.
Well, if they're the number
seed.
1 overall seed, they kind
right.
of.
But even if they were the
they're going to give
fourth,
them that.
right, even if they were the 4th 1 seed, they're still going to be that West because nobody else would prefer that. You know what I'm saying? Almost certainly. Even if they drop, so you can start to predict those things, and then once you take them out, it's like, okay, these teams are going to go here, and you can almost fit together what the bracket's going to look like before the selection show, just with a few, question marks as is this team going to be ranked above this team? That could change where they go, but like the seed line will stay the same. The point is, we'll know more in the week or two leading up to selection show, but I think if you're Purdue, you want to stay on the bottom half of the bracket, away from any 1 seeds until you would see them in the Elite Eight.
Unless you are the 1 seed.
Right, unless you are. But and the assumption that they're not, because that's definitely the more likely scenario, you don't want to go back to the 4 line. Like, that's what happened last year, and you had a good run. You met a 1 seed too early. Like, honestly, if Purdue plays them in the Elite Eight instead of the Sweet 16, they might even fare better. So I think that's probably number 1 in the pecking order. So let's get out of the 4. Let's at least get a 2 or a 3. That way we can play our way through the bottom half of the region. And then if we end up seeing a 1 in the Elite Eight, so be it. Like, at that point, it's time to go no matter what. And even if you play a 1 seed, the seeds don't even really matter anymore, because if you played a lower seeded team that caught fire, they're almost more dangerous than a 1 seed. But I do think it's important, like, Purdue be on the bottom half. Then you hope you don't run into a team like Iowa State or Illinois in the Sweet 16. You hope it's I'd almost take UConn over either of those teams. I would take, even Houston. Like, I'd almost take a Sweet 16 matchup against Houston again if Purdue's the 3 and Houston's the 2. And I know it sounds crazy because Houston, we've talked about some of the matchup issues they posed when we talked about the game last year. But I just think Purdue could fare better than some sort of explosive offense that can also just, out rebound with length and force turnovers and stuff. So I think if we can get Purdue on the bottom half of the bracket and then play a team that matches up reasonably well, that's probably an attainable scenario that bodes well for them.
Well, let's wrap up real quickly. I know we're running up on the end of it, but Joe Lunardi from ESPN has Purdue as the 3 seed in the Midwest out of Chicago. But instead, and this is why I'm even bringing this up, they have them playing Troy in the first round with North Carolina and Miami of Ohio in the 6-11 matchup. In the other game in this little pod, and as we remember, they go in pods, and I don't know how, and I've seen it happen, so I'm not saying Lunardi's dumb, but I don't know how you would put a 3 seed and Purdue in a pod with North Carolina in Greenville, North Carolina. I don't, and I think that's pretty low. Not at Lunardi. I've seen the committee do it, and I wouldn't be very happy. Now, that's, you know what? You still got to win the ball games. You still got to go and play the games. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but that's a pretty low. Hey, you're a 3 seed. Go to Greenville because in your second round game, you're playing an away game.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's more of just a kind of way the cookie crumbles type of situation where it's like Purdue just kind of gets what's left. Those 3 and 4 seeds kind of just get what's left.
Well, if that's the case,
then,
send them to Philadelphia and move Virginia, Tulsa, Kansas, North Dakota State to Greenville. Then you don't have any of that issue.
Yeah, that's
if you're looking
one,
at his bracket by chance.
I'm assuming that he thinks Purdue is geographically closer to Greenville than Philadelphia. It must be if that's why he did that.
It's got to be 6 and 1 and a half dozen of the other. It's got to be darn near close midway, but not a big deal. Again, still 6 weeks away, so it's not that big of a deal. But I that will be a gripe if it comes out to something like that, because look, if you've got nobody that's really attached, I mean, Kansas, Lawrence is just as equally far away from both Greenville and Philadelphia. Virginia, about equidistant between Greenville and Philadelphia, and those are the 2 teams that you matter about sending them to, try to keep it. But still not a big deal. I could just see it coming.
Yeah, that's a good point though. Like they easily could take Philadelphia over Greenville. It's pretty much the same thing.
You could flip those 2 pods and switch locations and have it not be a glaring home game for North Carolina,
right?
While they play in Greenville. But you know what? Makes those wins even better, because 36-4 is one heck of a good record. But that brings us to the end of the elongated Wednesday version of Boilermaker Lounge. Again, apologies about scheduling and things like that. Delayed the this week's first show, but we will have a Friday show. We're going to preview the Oregon game and maybe have some other stuff to talk about. Maybe some of the recruiting class type of news and stuff like that, and some stuff to talk about that. But for the All-American Grant Flora, I am Sam Sprunger. We will see you on Friday.